Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to Hands on SAP Dev, another episode with me, your host. I suppose DJ, that's me. Yes, qmacro. So here we are again, 2 weeks back into the regular cycle, which I'm really happy about. And today we're going to be talking about GitHub mechanics for the Open Documentation Initiative. So that's quite nice. We'll talk a little bit more about what that all is about shortly. So welcome to everybody who's joined. Welcome Helmut, Peter, Christian. So where have we obviously Helmut, moin from Hanover. Peter, good morning all. Christian, hello, greetings from Ulmet. Where's Ulmet? Middle of nowhere. Well, welcome to the middle of nowhere. I've got my coffee, although I was drunk half of it already, and all of a sudden, like the 8 o'clock start, the go live start, suddenly caught up on me. So like, oh my goodness! Here we go. So yes, what have we got? Well, we're going to be talking about the Open Documentation Initiative again, a little bit more of a deep dive into some of the automation that we've got already. Hey, good day, Nikhil. I hope everyone is doing safe and well. Me too. Thank you, Nikhil, and welcome. Thanks for joining. Everybody's welcome. It was a holiday in Germany and some of the rest of Europe yesterday, and I think quite a few people are off as well today, taking a Brückentag. There's just a few of us today, which is quite nice. We're going to be doing a bit more of an in-depth look at the repositories in the SAP-docs organization on GitHub and how we're trying to sort of manage and automate a little bit of the stuff that goes on. I've got a little bit of hay fever today, so you'll see me blowing my nose a little bit. So, Mark, good morning, Mark. And Samuele, good morning. Johan, hi to you, good morning to you. And Akshay, what are we going to learn today? That's a good question. I like that question. We are going to learn, hopefully, a little bit about GitHub Actions. We did a live stream on GitHub Actions before, but we're going to look specifically at a use case. We're using GitHub Actions and workflow definitions on the SAP-docs repositories to help us with checking contributions. For example, making sure that the contributions are in the right place, against the right files, but also just checking some sort of basic Markdown linting. We're right at the very start of this journey, so we've only got a small amount of automation, deliberately so. So that is what we're going to be learning about today. Thank you, Nikhil. Get well soon. Well, I've had hay fever pretty much all my life. It's nothing now. When I was a kid, it was quite bad, but no, it's just a few sniffles here and there. But thank you for your well wishing. Much appreciated. So, before I go on, we've got the developer news out today. Let me just share that in the chat there. Lots of news, all the news that's fit to print, as they say. Really cool. So have a look at that when this is over. Don't go and watch that now. Just pay attention to us. So. First of all, I want to start with congratulations and a ta-da, hooray! We've got our first badges assigned. So one of the things that I mentioned last week was, and also in the blog post last week and this blog post here, is that we want to recognize valuable contributions. Okay, so I'm not going to go through the documents, the blog post here, but we've got a couple of badges. We've got a couple of new collaboration missions or collaboration badges. I'd probably use the word badges when I should use the word missions. Same thing to me. And we have our first badge or mission recipients. So congratulations. Our first recipient is Christian here? Yes, of course he's. Sorry, I forgot you were here, Christian, because you're in the middle of nowhere. You're not coming to us from your usual location. So welcome and congratulations to Christian in earning I'm going to hover over it, Open Documentation Initiative Contribute Content Badge. That's awesome. We also have some other badge recipients. We got Ivona, a friend of the channel here, for receiving the Open Documentation Initiative Provide Feedback badge, as did Jitendra. And since then, is this in sort of order? Since then, has Jitendra earned yet another badge? Brand your customized app with Mobile Development Kit SDK. My goodness me, I thought this mission was, had a long title, but that's even longer. But anyway, so Jitendra, well done for getting the Provide Feedback badge as well. And Mr. Thomas Young, prolific as usual. Tom's got a Provide Feedback badge and a Contribute Content badge, so you can earn those badges as well. Really, really cool. Have a look at this blog post, collaboration missions, and find out how and why and what and everything. So I'm going to share that with you as well. I don't know whether you can hear that. That's our washer spinning really fast, going next door. So I don't know. Anyway, I can't do anything about it. So I'm going to stop it now. So there we go. Gaurav, good morning, and Santiago, good morning as well to you, or good day, good morning, good evening, whatever. Thank DJ, keep helping community. Well, thank you for keep joining us. I mean, the community is us, right? It's not me helping you, it's us helping each other, which is really cool. Hey, and Romain, good morning to you. Good morning to you, and welcome. So, I think that's it in terms of sort of, hand wavy stuff. So why don't we dive in straight away to the things that we sort of briefly touched on last week. Let me switch to the main scene. I've been... What a fool! What a fool! I've been showing my screen, thinking I'm sharing my screen, but I haven't. I've been still on the intro scene on OBS. So what a fool! So I'll flip through those. So here's the blog post I've just shared with you. Here's Christian's badge, and Ivona, and Jitendra, and Thomas. Maulik, good day to you as well. VGM, very good morning. Oh, VGM, very good morning. Sorry, thank you. Yes, I am learning and growing with next-gen tech from SAP. Next-gen tech from SAP. That sounds really cool. Tell us what specific next-gen tech are you learning and growing with? I would love to know. We would all love to know. So thank you. Tell us what it is. Anyway. So while you dig that out, oh, that's interesting. Why are there two ABAP badges there? What's that one there? Create a factory calendar object and connect. Oh, I see. Okay, these are different ABAP missions. Cool. Okay, so what we've got, let's just remind ourselves. Let's close that one. Let's close a few things. I always get a little bit confused here. SAP-docs, SAP-docs. Here is our organization on GitHub that contains the two repositories we looked at last week. This repository contains the Markdown source for the documentation for Business Application Studio, and this contains the Markdown source for the contribution guidelines. So if we have a look at that, for example, we had a look at this last week, and we know roughly the structure of this, right? We've got a contributing file, which tells you sort of how you're supposed to contribute, and it also will provide a link to the contribution guidelines themselves. We've got a general README, which is this README here, of course. So the contributing and the README file at this level are not anything that we are looking for you or anybody really to contribute to. It's all the actual documentation itself, right? So, which lives in like a directory, specific directory. This is conventional, right? A convention. Of course, we also don't want you to change the licenses or submit pull requests to change anything in the .github directory. It's all about the content in the docs directory. So what I'll do is I'll create a fork of this in my own organization. So we'll set up, I don't want to play around with the production repositories. So we'll do it so we can sort of make mistakes and things if we need to. I've just realized, where's my phone? Oh, my phone's charging in there. I'm going to take my watch off because I haven't got, there's my sort of, what's it called? Clock at the top. So I'm going to take my watch off because I'm not sure what time it is. So there we go. There, 8:09. 8:09, there we go. So, BTP, yes, Maulik, BTP, that is next gen tech. It's pretty awesome. So let us know what specific parts of BTP you're looking at. Mark Teichman, Shell and Vim seem to be next gen. Mark, I like you. Yes, Shell and Vim are a constant. Okay, old and new together. So yes, and Christian, I loved your blog post. Christian, why don't you share the link to your blog? Can you share the link to your blog post? Drum.sh, is it drum.sh? Drum. What's your website? I thought it was drum.sh. Is it not drum.sh? Oh, it is. There we go. Which I really like, drum.shell. So here is a really cool blog post from Christian. Just in case, I can never remember whether you folks are allowed to share links in this chat. I just don't understand it. But there we go. Maulik, AI and machine learning. Okay, that is definitely next gen. Fantastic. Fantastic. Really, really cool. That's something that I don't really know much about. I would love to learn more about specifically machine learning. But yeah, really cool. Well done. So there's Christian's blog post on setting up his dev environment with Vim. Really, really nice to see. And yeah, there we go. So let's create a copy of this repository so we can start messing around, okay? Because I want to sort of set things up and then do a contribution and look at the automation that happens, and we'll dig into that. Is that a good idea? Shall we do that? Yeah, okay. So over here, I have got an organization. I'm logged in the, this is the dark theme. It's not really a dark theme, it's just the incognito window. I'm logged in as, so where you see, just to orientate ourselves, where you see my stupid face here, that's me, qmacro. And where you see my cartoon face, that's me, that's my alternative identity, qmacro-dev, which is a different GitHub ID, okay? And qmacro-dev is the administrator of an organization I've created called qmacro-dev-org, okay? So that's, you know, just to land ourselves here. So I've got a qmacro-dev-org organization. I've got no repositories in it, so I'm going to fork the SAP-docs contribution guidelines repository into here. But what I've also got, being the administrator of qmacro-dev-org, I can see that I have this morning, just to set this up, created a copy of the GitHub app that's installed on the SAP-docs organization. Can I see that actually? Can I go back to, I'm not sure I can see it because I'm not an administrator of the github.com SAP-docs app. What's the URL? Let me just go back to here. Install GitHub apps, configure. I don't think I can see it. Anyway, what I can do though is github.com apps SAP-codoc. So we've got this CODEOWNERS app, which doesn't do anything actually. This CODEOWNERS app is a skeleton app, and it provides us with the ability to really nicely and securely and highly granularly define permissions that can then be used in workflows. It's a really good way of being as secure as we can in terms of what we allow steps in jobs in workflows to do. So we'll come on to that shortly. So Helmut says, using Vim constantly in my new project environment. Awesome experience. I like you as well, Helmut. So Malik, but we are looking for more utilities, free for demo at least. Yes, always good to see, see what else you can use as well on the business technology platform. That's all right. So thanks for mentioning the blog. Thanks for writing the blog post. Come on, Christian. Are you trying to annoy me deliberately? Blog post. Anyway, so we have this SAP-codoc app, okay? And the developer is SAP-docs. It was basically me and a colleague, Tobias, awesome colleague, and we created that app in the docs, in the SAP-docs organization. Okay, if you say go to the website, basically the website is the SAP documentation thing, right? So I've created a similar app. Okay, that app requires permissions, read access permissions to code, as in repository content, members, as in who's in those repositories, and also as in from an organizational perspective, and also metadata, which is almost like a sort of a implicit required access as well. It also wants to be able to read and write issues and pull requests, so it can actually make comments on issues and make comments on pull requests and assign labels and so on. Okay, this app here, okay, I've installed it. I've created it. I've installed it on this dev organization, and I've said, access all repositories. I've got no repositories in this organization, so let's just keep it simple. Access all repositories in the organization, and that's it. Okay, there's the app settings. The app has an ID. okay? And also I've generated a private key, okay? And I've stored the app ID and the private key as organization level secrets, okay? So these organization level secrets allow me to, in any repository inside this organization, access these, okay? Because when you create an organizational secret, you can say, I'll make this secret accessible to all public repositories in this organization, which I did, or you can say, oh, only private organizations in private repositories in this organization, or specific repositories in this organization. So I've just said, in this organization, all repositories, all public repositories. Okay, so I've got those two things there. Now, so Christian says, never can get this right. Blog post. Okay, let's. Yeah, I was gonna go on a bit of a rant there, but I won't. But a blog, a weblog, is a collection of posts. You write an article, you write a post, and it's in a weblog. Anyway, where were we before? I see. I knew I'd distract myself. Okay, yes. So what we'll do is we'll go to github.com SAP-docs, and we'll go to the contribution guidelines. And I'm me, qmacro-dev here. I'm going to fork it. Okay, I'm going to fork it into qmacro-dev-org. Ignore the qmacro-org. That's another organization I've got for testing. Nothing to do with this. And while we're forking, what's Peter said? Add a vote to open for contribution button on each SAP help product page. Add a vote to open. That's a really cool idea. I'll feed that back. Sorry, I didn't see the light bulb. Yeah, Peter, nice idea. I will definitely feed that back to the documentation owners and the help portal owners. That's really cool. I like that. If I don't mention it next week, remind me again, Peter. So we've now got a fork. Okay. So let's have a look in the actions. And when you fork, we know this from a previous hands-on SAP Dev live streams on. I can't think of words today. What's going on? Live streams relating to the TechEd 2020 developer keynote. When you fork a repository, just for security reasons, GitHub will say, well, I don't want to allow the automatic execution of workflows without you even knowing. So, it's giving us an opportunity to say, yeah, okay, that's cool. Allow, enable workflows, okay? So we have these workflows, and we looked at these workflows briefly last week. I'm just going to disable that one. But basically, the reason what that one does is synchronize any changes that have been pushed back to an internal repository inside of SAP on a GitHub Enterprise Server instance. So we're not doing any synchronization in this particular case. We're just going to be messing around with the workflows. So I've just disabled that. Okay. Now let's have a quick look at these four workflows. The first two, disallowed content checker and Markdown linter, we'll mess around with those first. And if that's all we get time-wise, that's fine. The disallowed content checker is the thing that will automatically check that someone hasn't inadvertently or deliberately tried to send a change to a file that's not in the docs directory. Okay, i.e., what we talked about just before, we only want people to send changes and improvements to files in the docs directory. Okay, so if they send changes and improvements, quote unquote, to stuff outside the docs directory, we want to have have an alert. So that's what that's all about. We'll look at that. Markdown linter. So I think all of us would be interested in this. Generally, linting, if you don't know what linting is, it's basically checking what you've written, whether that's Markdown or in some programming language. It can check for stylistic, syntactic, grammar style, either errors or more style conventions. Okay, so if you want to follow a certain convention and you also want to be told, oh, by the way, you made a mistake there, you shouldn't really be doing that, That's what linting is all about, okay? And so when a change comes in the form of a pull request, we want to automatically just check a few stylistic rules that we want to share with you all, what we have shared with you all. I'll show you where, so that we keep the Markdown consistent, okay? So we'll look at that as well. The merged pull request labeler, that's a bit of a mouthful, but basically, in order to be able to recognize valuable contributions, if a pull request is merged, right, then almost like by definition, it's valuable because we've used what you've supplied. So we want to assign the contribution label so that we can mark that as, yeah, that's a piece of valuable contribution. So whenever a pull request is merged, this workflow automatically assigns the contribution label. This final one here, SAP Community Profile URL Requester. Now, Christian, well, let's show you the result of that. Where was it, Christian? I think you were in the BTP Business Application Studio. You saw, for example, the result of that thing running. This is what you earned your badge for. It asks you, once the contribution label has been added, it will automatically come in and say, hey, thanks for your contribution, person. Give us your URL. Okay, so that's what that one does. Okay, so now we've got an overview. Are we all clear as to generally what these workflows are all about? Let me know in the chat, and we'll start to do something. Okay, to see what happens from a workflow perspective, and then we'll look to see why that's happened and how that's been triggered. How about that? So what have I got? I've got a contribution guidelines repo in an organization that I, qmacro-dev, I should have different hats, shouldn't I? qmacro-dev own. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my qmacro persona. Let's close that. And in here, qmacro-org dev. What? Oh, sorry, qmacro-dev-org, dev-org. I've changed back temporarily to this keyboard here, right? This Logitech. It's a really nice K380 keyboard, but it's flat, and I'm so used to typing on a mechanical keyboard that I'm struggling a little bit. I've only changed. I've changed back for really boring reasons. The other one's over there, but anyway. So there we go. There's the contribution guidelines. Oh, Christian says, sorry, got to go already. We'll have to watch the recording. Okay, bye, Christian. Thanks for joining us. So here's the contribution guidelines. I am now me, DJ. So I'm going to now go here and say, okay. Rather than go through the SAP help portal, which would be the normal way, and of course that would lead us to the contribution guidelines repository in the SAP-docs org. We want to go into this org for our testing purposes for this particular episode. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to, go into the feedback or do's and don'ts. Why not? Right? And I'm going to make a change. So this is me. I'm going to make a change. And as you can see, this is what you'll get as well. Of course, we saw this last week. Oh yeah, you DJ, qmacro don't have access directly to the contribution guidelines repository in the qmacro-dev-org, right? In the qmacro-dev-org organization. So we created a fork of this project in your space, qmacro space, so you can do it. So I'm going to say here, I'm going to say something else as well. Okay, and what I'll also do is I'll add another little section here. Another section. This is a bonus but incorrect section. Okay, and you'll see why I've done that shortly. Basically, one of the Markdown linting rules that we looked at briefly last week, is that we want a linear progression if we're going through headings. Okay, just like in HTML or any other sort of document composition. You want to go from a heading to the next level heading to the next level heading. You don't want to jump, boing. Okay, So that's that rule there. In fact, if you're interested in where the rules are, if you have a look in the contribution guidelines, for example, repository, in the .github, workflows, Markdown lint, this is where we keep the configuration for the rules, okay? And that is exactly this heading increment true here. Okay, we'll have a look at this URL shortly, rules aliases. But this is basically a set of the rules that we're using, or some of the, this is the full set of rules from which we've taken a few that we're using. Okay, so let's make that smaller again. So again, this is something we saw last week. We're now proposing a change. Okay, update do's and don'ts. I'm not going to type any extra things in there, but I would encourage you to do that to explain why you're making the change. What we're saying here is we're going from patch 1, so it creates a patch branch automatically for you in my qmacro's repo fork. And the intention of this pull request is to say, please pull the changes here into the contribution guidelines repository, the main branch, in the in the owner's organization. In our case, of course, in that little test organization, qmacro-dev-org. Okay, shows you the changes. So I'm going to create a pull request. Bang. Okay, some reason why, etc., etc. You start the conversation, create pull request. Now, what's going to happen over here? If we refresh this page, what's going on here? No runs yet. Come on. What's happening? Oh, there we go. Disallowed content checker. Why can't I see over there? Am I not looking at the right thing? Oh! I refreshed the page. I see. What I did there is I refreshed the page, but I forgot I'd highlighted the sync back to internal. So I'm saying, show me all the sync back to internal runs. Of course, there aren't any. A, because there's no sync to do, and B, because I've disabled it anyway. I should go to all workflows, and there it is. Update do's and don'ts, right? And they were both run 38 seconds ago, so just now. So, which ones have run? We can see that the disallowed content checker, that one, has run successfully. And the Markdown linter has run unsuccessfully. Well, I mean, successfully and unsuccessfully, that's not really the right pair of terms. It's run, and this one has no errors and this one has an error. Okay, it's different, semantically different, I suppose. But anyway, before diving into the output of that, let's have a look what it looks like from a human perspective, from a contributor perspective. Some checks were not successful. The Markdown linter was not successful. Okay, we'll look at that shortly. The disallowed content checker was successful. Let's look at the details of the disallowed content checker job. So I'm going to click on here, which is the same, going back with my qmacro-dev, I can see it here as well, right? So just look at it here. So you can look at the output as well, right? We're now looking in the checks tab of this pull request. And we can see that in the disallowed content checker, it does a number of things. It checks out the repository. It authenticates GH, which is the command line, the CLI tool for GitHub for doing all sorts of GitHub things. Basically, most things you can do in GitHub, you can do from the command line with GH. The alternative to using GH would just be to use, for example, curl and make API calls and whatever. We check to see if the actor, and the actor in this context is basically the person who created the pull request. So the actor in this context is qmacro, whether they have admin permissions on the repo. If they do, there are some very small legitimate reasons why we might want to change what otherwise would be disallowed content, but only us from an administration perspective. If I need to change the README, or somebody from the open source program office needs to change the license for whatever reason, we need to allow me and my colleagues there to do that. Okay, so that's why we're looking, does the person have permission? Probably not. And if not, then we go and look to see what's been changed. We can see what's changed here, docs, do's and don'ts. But none of those changes are in the disallowed list. We'll look at the details of this shortly. And therefore we do not run, that means this step hasn't been run, we do not run the, hey, you've changed the file you shouldn't have changed message. Okay? Slight overview. Is that okay? Does that make sense so far? You're all very quiet. So let me know if we're following this. Let's go back to the checks. Back to the thing here. So that was that one. Now let's look at the Markdown linter, which has got a big red cross against it. The Markdown linter, we're going to be, taken to the same place. There's the disallowed content checker. We can collapse and expand the different jobs in here. Just as a quick reminder, we did cover this in a previous episode on Hands-on SAP Dev. GitHub Actions terminology. GitHub Actions is the overall sort of umbrella name for all this stuff that we're talking about here. A workflow is something that is triggered, okay, when something happens. For example, we've had two workflows triggered, the Markdown linter workflow and the disallowed content checker workflow. Inside a workflow, let's have a look actually. Inside a workflow, there's the disallowed content checks. That was triggered on a pull request towards main. And it has a number of jobs. There's only one job here, right? So a workflow has one or more jobs, and a job has one or more steps. So GitHub Actions, umbrella. Workflow, definition of one or more jobs with triggers and everything. Job and steps. Okay, so what's happened here? So here's the main job. The job has a number of steps. These are all the steps here. So set up job, check out the repository, run to see what files have been changed. Okay, we do the same thing. Okay, so we see the matching files. In this case, yeah, this has been changed here. So we want to. Why do we want to check the files that have been changed here as well? So that we can lint those files. We don't want to lint all the files in the repository. We just want to lint the files that the contribution has provided, that you as the contributor have provided. Okay, because it might be, and this happened to Christian. When Christian submitted his change, I originally didn't have this part, so I just linted the whole of the content of the repo and found all sorts of linting issues that we still haven't got round to tidying up because we've implemented these rules sort of post hoc, as it were. So that's completely my fault. So I've now added this step to say, let's just work out the files that have changed, right? And just lint those. Okay. Oh, Lars, permissions. Have you looked at the code owners feature in GitHub? Yes, we have. Exactly. That's a really good point, Lars. We do have in the, you'll see it here in the GitHub, we've got code owners. There we go. And we've got quite a simple setup. So basically, for anything in the docs directory, it has to be reviewed by somebody in this team. For anything outside that, because the way that for those who don't know, I'm sure Lars, you do know. For anybody who doesn't know, that these files are read from the bottom up, and the first match takes. So basically, if it's not in the docs directory, it's going to carry on reading up. Oh, well, catch all. Anything outside the docs directory basically has to be approved by somebody in the contribution guidelines admin team, which is like me and Jens. Okay. So that's that. Good point, Lars. Nice one. So we've got the step that works out what files have changed. Then we add this matcher, which I'll come to later. Then we install the linting tools. Okay. So we install Markdown lint. And then we run it, okay? We run Markdown lint. And what's happened is that the Markdown lint output is this. Error, docs, do's and don'ts.md, line 5, MD001. Remember those things at MD001? These are the Markdown lint sort of rule IDs. So the Markdown linter uses these rules, and other tools use these rules and refer to these rules as well. So it's quite nice. So you'll eventually get used to seeing MD1. But even if you don't, it tells you heading increment, header increment, right? Heading levels should only increment by one level at a time. So I expected H2, but I actually got H3, and that's our deliberate. Where is our? Here we go. Yeah, let's open this in another tab. That's our deliberate mistake here. So we went from heading level 1 straight to heading level 3, and that's not allowed. Now we also see here, and that's the beauty of this other step that I've skipped over. We also see here that when we go into the files change now, in this conversation, right, in this pull request, it will show us, hey, on this line here, so this red thing applies directly to the line above it. Hey, look here, check failure on line 5. There's line 5. Heading levels should only increment by one at a time. Really cool. Okay, what's that do? View check run for this annotation, so we can just jump straight to the check run, which is where we were. Don't know why it's black there, but anyway, don't want to do that. So that's the only thing that was in error, right? So if we go back to the checks here, we can, oh, there we go, Markdown linter on pull request. Oops, sorry, go back, extend, look at main. That's that only error, okay? And then we get the sort of the summary error at the bottom, process completed with Xcode 1. So there we go. So basically the return codes from processes like this are important. So if something ends with a return code that's not 0, it will automatically mark the step as failed and therefore the job has failed, unless you do anything special. Okay, so that's that. So what have we talked about so far? We've talked about a pull request that I've created. Let's go back to the pull request. And we've talked about some checks running. Okay, so why did those checks run? Let's have a look at those two files. So we're talking about the disallowed content checks and the markdown checks. Let's look at the disallowed content checks workflow definition first, because that's the one that we looked at first. Here, is that big enough, by the way? Here, what this is saying is, when does this workflow run? This workflow runs on a pull request. Specifically, this workflow runs on a pull request that's targeting the main branch. Okay. Let's have a brief look at what this job does. Okay, I'm not going to spend time going through the absolute finest detail of what this syntax means, but basically, this says here there are some jobs. There's actually one job. Okay, that's it. That's all there is at the bottom, right? This is YAML, so it's indented. Indented. Where does this run? Where's the context in which this job runs? It should run on a Linux box or a Linux container, which is automatically provisioned, set up. The stuff runs and then it's thrown away. Okay, the beauty of containers. So we want an Ubuntu 2004 environment, so it's predictable. We know what tools are in there. What GitHub gives us are, or makes sure is in these environments as well, are of course tools like Git, npm, and also the GH tool, the GitHub CLI, for example. So the first step goes back to that CODEOWNERS app. This one, where is it? Let's go back to the app that we installed. Here, qmacro-dev-org. Goes back and uses this app's authorization configuration in the form of those two secrets we have at the organization level. The first secret we looked at was the app ID. Okay, so that's basically the ID of the app here. This is in my qmacro-dev-org, my app 118994. So that's what's in the secret there. And in this secret here, the private key in PEM format that's encoded, not encoded, encoded, in base 64, not encrypted, but encoded in base 64, because then it's easy to cut and paste and manage. That is the private key of that app that's been installed on my org. Okay, so we're using the app's permissions. Okay, and only those permissions that the app has. And the permissions that the app has are, well, it can read the contents, the commits themselves, the branches, and so on. It can read and write issues, so it can obviously then, have conversation with the person on the issue. If it needs anything, it also needs a bit of metadata about the repository itself. And it also has read-write from a pull request perspective. And then further down here at the organization level permissions, it needs to be able to read membership. Okay. So what it does is it uses this specific action to go and get to generate a token that it can use. And that token will have specific permissions that are needed, and only those permissions. Okay. Lars, e.g. a typo in a readme. Oh, disallowed content. I guess it's a required check, which will fail the pull requests. I'm wondering if you get a real good contributions, then you'll never be able to merge those PRs, and admin must make the PR. Disallowed content. We don't want to merge anything that disallowed content throws up. The disallowed content is all about if somebody provides a change to a file that's outside the docs directory. So if somebody provides a change to a workflow definition, or somebody provides a change to the contribution file itself, or the license file, we don't want any changes there. We just want changes in the docs directory. So that's what that is. But these are great interjections, Lars. So but you say also, e.g. a typo in a README will not be possible for anyone but the admins of PR. No, we're not checking for typos. I suppose we are. We want to check for typos, but we don't want to merge anything that's got a typo anyway, right? So and in fact, that's a really good point. Let's have a look at now how I, as a contributor, can address that change. Okay, that's good. So thanks, Lars, for that. But let's just carry on looking through this first. We use an action to check out the repo. Don't forget what we're doing here is when we're running through these steps, we're in the context of this container, right? This ephemeral container that's going to disappear after this workflow run. Then we use that token we generated here to authenticate the GH command so that subsequent commands can do the right thing and have the right permissions. Lars says, but the README is not in the docs folder. So let's just make sure we're all clear here. Thank you so much for these questions as well. Let's make sure we understand. So there is this README here. Yeah, that is not in the docs folder, but this README is just this sort of meta README. The README is about the repository. Okay. In the same way, let's go to the documentation for the Business Application Studio. This README at the top level is about this repository. It's not any sort of README about the Business Application Studio. The documentation for the Business Application Studio is in the docs directory, which this one doesn't have a README, for example. It doesn't need a README. Does that make sense? So we've got a README in here, but we don't want, we're not looking for changes to the repository README. We're just looking for changes to the actual Business Application Studio documentation, the collaboration on the documentation that's on the help portal, which is, our collectively owned crown jewels. So Peter says, you mentioned earlier that SAP wants to keep this as simple as possible. In case of linting errors on a PR, the author can add a commit on the PR to fix the mistake and not have to deal with squashing. Yes, exactly. Yeah. So let's do that. Let's do that now. Did we finish going through this? Here we go. Where are we? Yeah, so we authenticate the GH command line tool. Then we basically make an API call to say, has this actor, qmacro in this case, permission, or what permission does this actor have on this repository? Okay, so the permission can be, I think, admin, read, write, maybe another one as well, I can't remember. And if they're not admin, then we want to check for disallowed changes. So we then use this action to say, what are the files that have been changed? Do they appear in any of these filters here? And I've got a filter called disallowed that basically says anything that's not in the docs directory. Okay. This action spits out a couple of things. It spits out a Boolean, disallowed, as in it spits out a Boolean for each of the filters we specify. So if there are things that match this glob here, then the name of this filter will be an output value, an output property set to true. So basically, if there's anything that's in there that matches this glob, then basically this step will run. And what this disallowed or this paths filter action also gives us is the list of files that are in that disallowed, that were matched by that disallowed filter. And what it does is it just prints a little warning. Hey, you've included some files that we can't accept, etc., etc. We'll look at what the detail of that is later. And we use the gh command to make a comment on that pull request. And we also then exit one to signal up the stack from that step to the job, to the workflow, that basically we want to make sure the workflow fails so that the check goes red in the PR. Okay, so that's that. So why don't we have a look at some of the things that we've been talking about from these excellent comments from Lars and Peter here. So we don't want to look at that anymore. Update do's and don'ts. Let's have a look at this conversation. There we go. So update do's and don'ts. Oh, that's right. Yeah. So I deliberately put in this extra title here. So what I'll do is I will make a change. Shall we do that? What time is it? Yeah, 8:47. Let's make a change. Again, let's go back in to, where are we? Contribution, we don't want that. We don't want that. Make sure I make it in the right place. Update do's and don'ts. I've got some things there. Yeah, okay. So now the key thing is add more commits by pushing to the patch 1 branch on qmacro contribution guidelines. Now, we can make the change in here. So as you can see, this is a hyperlink. So click on the patch 1. Okay, and we can see we're in patch 1. So I'm going to go back. What did I change? Docs, do's and don'ts? Do's and don'ts. I'm going to make that change. This is a bonus but incorrect section. I'm going to sort of, undo that deliberate mistake. Fix heading level. Okay, commit directly to the patch 1 branch. Commit so we can do all the fixing still in the browser on GitHub. Now, what's that going to do? That is going to, let's go back to the contribution guidelines here, for example. That is going to cause those two workflows to run again, because both of these workflows are triggered again, which is cool, which is what we want. So if we now look at the pull request, update do's and don'ts, we can see the orange is basically saying, we're running the checks. All checks are passed. So basically I've corrected that mistake, which is great. So we can go ahead and, merge the pull request or close the pull request or whatever. Now, we've talked, so Lars, you've been asking about the disallowed thing. Shall we do one with the disallowed as well? What should we do? Yeah, why not? Why not? So if we go to contribution guidelines, actually, let's go to my fork of it, of course, qmacro. Well, actually, it doesn't really matter. It'll do the same thing. I'll go in here. I'll make a change to the contributing file. No, let's not make a change there. That's slightly confusing because this is contributing guidelines and contributing. So let's make a change to this README file. So I'm going to make a change, and here we go. You're making changes in the project you don't have write access to. Submitting a change will write it to a new branch in your fork. Exactly what we want. Let's say I'm in your README editing your protected stuff. There we go. How about that? So we'll say here, propose changes, update README. I mean, why you would do this, I don't know, but you know, let's go through the process, right? So we've got this new branch, patch 2, in my qmacro fork of the repository of the qmacro-dev-org version of the repository. Fine, there we go. Update README, that'll do. Some description here. Don't do that at home. Okay, so now let's have a look what happens. And while we do that, let's take some coffee. Disallowed content checker. Will it fail? Will it succeed? I hope it fails in a way, because that's what it's supposed to do. There we go. Okay, so we can see that the qmacro-codoc identity, because we're taking the identity, we're taking the authorization for, and therefore the identity of the app that I've installed on the qmacro-dev-org organization. This is the thing that we saw. If we have a look, let's go into the code. This is the thing that we saw in here, in the workflows, disallowed content, right at the bottom. There's that little sort of, you know, siren, hi there, etc. Right? It looks like you've included some files in this pull request that we can't accept in a contribution. Only actual documentation content, which is managed in the docs directory, is open for contribution. The disallowed files that you submitted are, and again, this is super edge case, right? But this is what it's all about, covering the edge cases in this live stream. You've changed readme.md, not docs readme.md or docs, you know, do's and don'ts or whatever, but you change this, right? Now, we can revert using GitHub Desktop, or just to sort of cover the case where you might be more comfortable with using the command line and, you know, your own clone of your fork. Let's do it here. Let's do it on, you know, on the command line. Git checkout origin, because what we've got to do, and what we will do, is we'll sort of undo that change and then change the proper README file, the one we wanted to change, as it were, the one in the docs directory. Also notice that the linting isn't there, because the linting only lints, you know, valid or accepted files. There's no point in linting this because we're not going to merge it anyway. Okay, the linting one, and why is that linting not run? Let's look at the specifics. Markdown checks, because it only is triggered when there's a pull request with the main branch as target, where the path includes files in this glob here. Okay, but we haven't changed anything in the place we're supposed to change things, in docs. We've changed outside that. So why don't we go and clone our fork. Let's go here. Yeah, there we go. So why don't we go to project, github.com, qmacro, gh repo, clone, contribution guidelines. Some strange noise outside. Okay, so now CD contribution guidelines, CD contribution guidelines. Now we've got the contribution guidelines. We've got the documentation stuff in there, and we've got the README that we've changed. Okay, but we can't see that change that we made because obviously when we cloned it, git branch remote and verbose, right? We only got the main. So if we say git checkout patch 2, we're now tracking patch 2. So now if we look at README, oh, it's somebody on the ladder next door. Ah, yes, okay. Can you hear that? We're in there. So we don't want that. We want to edit the README in docs, for example. Now I'm in the right place for an edit. Okay, we'll change that. But in fact, if we have a look at the status, what we need to do, and what we've been, encouraged to do, is git checkout origin main to undo that file. Okay, so now if we look at the status, we've got a modified README. And now if we look at the README now, that I'm in your thing has gone. Okay, so let's git add docs README. Look at the status, git commit update the right README. Sorry. Git push. So, Lars, okay, it is not a required check, so it can be merged. Exactly, yeah. Oh, we only hear me, not my family. Thank you, Helmut. Wonderful, 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 wonderful. Okay, so in the last few minutes, let's have a look now at what that has done. As you can see, the screen updates automatically on this pull request. Update the right README. Sorry, so that's the commit I've just pushed to the patch2 branch. And now we get, let's show all checks, we get both check, what? Why does it keep uncollapsing? Uncollapsing? Collapsing. We get the Markdown linter because we've now pushed something to the docs directory. And also the disallowed content checker is happy because we don't have any changes to the top level README. So there we go. Anyway, one more thing before we go. Let's have a quick look. So we can merge that, for example. Let's review it. Let's add myself as a reviewer. No reviews. I can't. So of course I can't add myself. I'm in the wrong persona. Come on, DJ. Work it out. Get qmacro-dev-org. Contribution guidelines. Pull requests. 2 pull requests. That one we want to close that because that was the previous one. Let's close that one. Thank you very much. Goodbye. This one, pull request. Let's update README. Yeah, that's a nice update. We're obviously only going to update this sort of test contribution guidelines things. Let's have a look. Yeah, that's fine. Submit review. One approval, changes approved. Merge pull request. Confirm merge. So there we go. So that's now merged. And if we have a look in the actions here, we can also see the merged pull request labeler is now running. That's because the merged pull request labeler runs when a pull request is closed. Now, there's a bit of a subtlety here. There isn't an actual merged type available to us. So what we've got to do is run on any time a pull request is closed and then check whether the actual status value, whether the actual value of the merged property is true. Okay. So that is running. Oh, that didn't work. What happened? Update README, assign label on merge. Oh, it's because the label doesn't exist, does it? On this, quickly created copy of the contribution guidelines. I wonder if we can go in quickly now. Contribution guidelines. Let's go and add issues, so we can get the labels as well. Go into issues, add a label, contribution, contribution. We'll be able to do this in the last couple of minutes. And then let's go back to actions and rerun. Will it work? But anyway, was that useful? Let me know if it was useful. While we're waiting for that to run, what I wanted to show you was and this is what you might want to have a look at this weekend or whatever, next week, in the workflows directory of the .github, of the contribution guidelines, in the real one as well. Let's look at the real one, right? So we know it's there. SAP-docs, contribution guidelines, workflows. We've got this Markdown lint directory with the configuration that you might want to have locally if you're editing files in Markdown locally and want to submit those and everything. So these are the rules that we have, okay? And these rules are also described in the contribution guidelines themselves on the SAP help portal. So there we go. So let's just, there we go. Assign label on merge. It's now worked. So hopefully that pull request is closed, which we closed it anyway, and it's now got the contribution guideline. And now what's also, there's something else running. Let's have a look at the action that's running. Checks. We are now running the SAP community profile URL requester, because that gets triggered when the contribution label is, oh, I've got a little ping there because I've just been pinged by this mention. Thanks for the valuable contribution. There we go. So, in fact, there it is. Okay, so that's it. Have a wonderful weekend. Yeah, I hope you got something on that. So Helmut says, thanks again. GitHub Actions got a bit clarity now. Good. My work here is therefore done. So yeah, thanks for joining, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.